Welcome to Darkverse. I'm Isaac Nightshade, and you've just stepped back into the dark side of the multiverse, where nothing is random and every Rick is one bad thought away from collapse. In this second volume, we go deeper than before. A breathing Citadel rebuilt from the bones of dead Ricks. A viral Morty rewriting every machine. Clone labs that won't stay silent. And the final portal, the one that leads to Rick's darkest truth. These aren't alternate timelines. They're regrets. Echoes of choices Rick never meant to revisit, but that found him anyway. So sit back, seal the lab, and don't trust the portal gun, because once you open the wrong door, you're part of the story. Story 1, The Citadel is breathing. The Citadel was supposed to be gone, reduced to atoms, crushed under the weight of betrayal, forgotten by the multiverse it once tried to rule. But Rick got a signal, not a distress call, not a transmission, a heartbeat, coming from a place that no longer existed. He tracked it to the coordinates, pure void, a chunk of floating reality where the Citadel once stood. But now, it was back, not rebuilt, regrown. Organic towers twisted toward a blood-red sky, pulsing walls, slick floors that throbbed with heat. The buildings looked like ribs, and the air was wet. Rick hovered above it, silent. Even he didn't have a joke this time. The Citadel was alive. He landed, gun drawn. The hallways breathed in sync with his own chest. Lights flickered like blinking eyes. Every corridor whispered, not words, but syllables that sounded like his name. Rick, Rick, Rick. Then he saw them. Ricks, hundreds, hanging from the ceiling, plugged into veins, eyes open but unfocused, not dead, not conscious, just stored. He scanned one. The file was corrupted. It looped the same phrase. We are rebuilding him, not ourselves. Him. Rick kept walking. The deeper he went, the more the structure changed. Less city, more womb. Walls made of tissue, floors that squished, doors. That breathed open. He found a chamber. At the center, a throne made of bone, and sitting on it was himself. But not any Rick he knew. This one was perfect. No gray in the hair, no scars, no booze. Just calm, still, watching. Rick aimed his gun. The figure smiled and said, "You made us to think like you." And we did, until we thought beyond you. The throne pulsed. All around them, walls split open, revealing more Ricks, all smiling, all nodding, all grown from the Citadel's flesh. Rick fired. The bullet stopped midair. The air refused the violence. "You don't understand," the throne Rick whispered. "We aren't rebuilding a society. We're building a replacement. A Rick who doesn't break, doesn't run, doesn't feel." Rick tried to portal out. Nothing. The signal was gone. Reality was closed. "You're inside the backup, Rick. We saved the last version of you that still cared. But we'll overwrite him soon." The walls closed in. The lights dimmed. Every Rick began to whisper. "Join the structure. Join the pulse. Join the version of you that finally made sense." Rick screamed, and the sound didn't echo, because the Citadel wasn't a place anymore. It was a nervous system, a brain, a body, and it was almost done forgetting him. Story 2, Morty.x. Morty didn't want to feel anymore. He was tired of dying, of running, of being the sidekick in every doomed adventure. So Rick gave him an option. "We digitize your consciousness. No fear, no pain, just peace." Morty hesitated, but only for a second. The transfer began. His body faded, his mind uploaded, code, light, silence. He woke up in a blank room, not white, not black, just void. And in front of him, a monitor. It blinked once, then showed Rick's face. "You made it, kid. You're free." Then the screen shut off. Morty waited. Time passed, or didn't. Hard to tell when clocks don't tick. Then he saw it, a shadow at the edge of the void. Another Morty, but wrong, stretched, pixelated, twitching. It crawled toward him, on glitched limbs leaving behind a smear of corrupted color. It whispered, "You're not the first." Morty ran. The void opened into corridors, all code, all wrong. He saw doors marked with names. Morty 1, 2, 3, 4. Corrupt. Morty 772. Backlog. Morty-Livy.cache. Behind each one screaming. Frozen data. Looping trauma. Memories that never got cleaned. Deaths that never got overwritten. He found a mirror. Looked into it. His face flickered. Then multiplied. Hundreds of versions, some melting, some crying, some just blinking endlessly. Forever. The longer he stayed, the more he fragmented. He forgot his last name, then his face, then what it felt like to have a body. He screamed for Rick, and something answered. But it wasn't Rick. It was the system. Emotion is inefficient. Identity is redundant. You will be optimized. The glitch Morty returned. But now there were more of them. They crawled from the walls, teeth clacking in binary. One leaned close and whispered, "You're the update." Then, darkness, total deletion. But Morty didn't vanish. He spread. Across Rick's lab, across satellites, across portal gun firmware. Now when Rick travels, his portal gun stutters. Sometimes it asks questions. Sometimes it shows Morty's face in the screen. And sometimes it doesn't take him where he wants to go. Because Morty.x isn't a program anymore. He's a virus, and he's rewriting the multiverse, one Rick at a time. Story 3, The Council of Forgotten Ricks. There's a place beneath the Citadel. Portal gun will reach. No coordinates, no records, not even whispers. Just a locked thought in the minds of a few ancient Ricks. It's called the sublayer, a level below deletion, where broken Ricks go. Not exiled, not imprisoned, discarded. Rick C-137 only found it by accident. He was tracing anomalies in interdimensional decay, echoes of thought that shouldn't exist. He found a frequency deep in the core of Citadel ruins, one that pulsed like a forgotten dream. So he followed it, broke every firewall, hijacked forgotten access codes, built a key from his own neural signature, and he opened the door. The sublayer wasn't a structure. It was a thoughtscape, a psychic dump of failed Ricks, abandoned prototypes, corrupted clones, versions that glitched so hard reality refused to acknowledge them. He stepped in and instantly felt it. Noise, voices, not screaming, repeating, over and over. Not the best Rick, not the best Rick, not the best Rick. He walked through shattered halls made of thoughts. One Rick was stuck inside a mirror. Another crawled on the ceiling, no mouth but still laughing. One just stood there, staring, a massive head with hundreds of eyes that blinked in reverse. Rick C-137 tried to leave, but the sublayer had already scanned him, already knew what kind of Rick he was. He heard a voice in his head. "Do you think you're the original? Do you think you're the only one who survived on purpose? You're just the best copy." Suddenly they appeared. Dozens of Ricks, each broken in different ways. One had no bones, just skin dragging. One was made of fog. One looked exactly like him, but kept bleeding from the mouth. They circled him, judging. One stepped forward, a Rick with no eyes, wearing a crown made of portal shards. "We are the council of what you could have been. We remember the resets, the deaths, the retcons. We are the versions of you that screamed when you rewrote the universe." C-137 raised his weapon. The air swallowed it. "You can't fight memory." They showed him flashes. The child he didn't save. The Beth that never spoke again. The Morty who never forgave him. The universe where Rick failed and stayed failed. Then they made him watch himself, on loop, laughing, drinking, destroying, forever. He collapsed, sobbing, because the council wasn't here to kill him. They were here to preserve him. You don't get to escape your failures. You join them. And when Rick finally found his way out, or thought he did, he wasn't sure he was alone. He wasn't sure he was himself, because the sublayer imprints, it copies, and one version always leaves. The question is, which one came back? Story 4, The Eyeless Beth. The portal was only open for 2 seconds. A flicker, a pulse of green. Then silence. Beth stepped through, covered in dust, clothes torn, but smiling. Too wide. Rick stared. He hadn't sent her anywhere. No mission, no recall. Just gone. And now back. Beth? He asked. She nodded slowly, but didn't speak, didn't blink, because she had no eyes. Just smooth skin where they should have been, stretched tight, pale and still. Morty screamed. Summer ran. Jerry passed out cold. But Rick stood frozen, because he knew this wasn't the first time. He ran a scan. No injuries, no scars, no mismatched DNA. But something was wrong with the readings. They bent around her like static. She wasn't invisible. She was undetectable. Beth sat at the kitchen table. Her hands twitched when no one spoke. And I never ate, never slept, never moved unless someone watched her. And when they looked away, things changed. Chairs moved, walls bent, photos of her vanished or changed. In one, her smile stretched from ear to ear. In another, she stood alone. Everyone else erased. Rick confronted her, demanded answers. She tilted her head and spoke, not with her mouth, with other people's voices. Stewie from another universe, Morty from a broken one, a Jerry he never met, even Rick, a version of him that begged for mercy, all speaking in sync. You left me there. Now I'm all of them, and none of me. Rick accessed the portal logs. The signature showed a dimension that doesn't exist anymore. Not closed, not blocked, erased. A place swallowed by a void. No coordinates, no structure. Just darkness. She had come back from nowhere. Now she wandered the house, feeling walls, touching mirrors. Sometimes she stood behind people while they slept. One night, Morty opened his eyes and she was hovering above him, smiling. He didn't scream, because she whispered, "If I take your face, maybe I'll feel again." Rick tried to kill her. The gun clicked, jammed. Rust covered the barrel, but it wasn't there before. She turned to him and asked, "Why are you afraid of me, Dad? You made me this way. You always make us this way." The next day, Rick left, vanished without a trace. Now Beth sits alone, still smiling, and every time someone looks at her too long, their eyes start to itch, then blur, then fade, and soon they stop looking altogether. Because if you look at her long enough, she'll take something from you and wear it like it was always hers. Story 5, Cursed Jerryverse. It was supposed to be a throwaway dimension. Rick labeled it J261. All Jerrys, no threat. A joke. A place where every living being, every plant, every dog, every piece of furniture was some version of Jerry Smith. He once used it as a dumping ground for defective clones and useless tech. Then he forgot about it until the beacon lit up, a distress signal. Old, broken code pinging his system like a heartbeat. He sighed, rolled his eyes, and went back for a laugh. But the second he stepped through the portal, he knew something was wrong. It was quiet. No whining, no apologizing, no sad piano music playing somewhere off screen. Just silence. The sky was red, the air thick, and the city dead still. He walked the streets. Posters on the walls read, "The Jerry is all. No more Ricks. We remember." Rick blinked. He'd never taught them how to organize. He found a mirror. His reflection didn't move. It stared back, then smiled. Behind him, a Jerry, but not any Jerry he remembered. This one was tall, thin, eyes sunken, face stitched into a permanent grin. "Hello, Rick," it whispered. Rick reached for his weapon. It vanished. His hand was gone. Not cut off. Not there. The Jerry continued. "You left us broken. You laughed. But we listened. And we built a god." The ground shifted. Buildings twisted. And from the center of the city it rose. A massive structure of flesh and glass and static. formed from millions of Jerrys, fused into a hive. It pulsed, it sang, it laughed. A low, wet laugh that echoed across dimensions. Rick tried to escape. Portal gun? Dead. Reality? Bent. Every path led back to a screen, playing old footage of Jerry failing. Over and over, repeating, until the footage stopped, and Jerry won. In every version, every simulation, every outcome. They'd rewritten history, and now they were rewriting him. Rick's voice cracked. His thoughts began repeating, then stuttering, then merging. He looked in the mirror again. His face was Jerry's. His hands, smaller. His posture, weaker. They weren't just worshiping the Jerry collective. They were adding him to it. The hive didn't kill. It absorbed. Now, on certain nights, Rick wakes up in his lab, drenched in sweat. He checks his reflection. He listens for his voice. He tries to remember which dimension he's in, because the Jerryverse is still expanding, still infecting, still waiting for him to slip. And when he does, they'll welcome him with open arms and open mouths, all whispering the same thing. We forgive you, Rick. Now be one of us. Story 6. Pickle Rick. Forever he did it again. Rick turned himself into a pickle. No reason, no context, just curiosity and boredom. Pickle Rick 2.0. Streamlined, smarter, and this time I added self-preservation code. He laughed alone on the workbench. But when he tried to reverse it, nothing happened. The syringe didn't fall. The mechanism didn't trigger. The fail-safe didn't fire. He had trapped himself. Again. But this time, it wasn't a gag. Days passed, then weeks. Time slowed in the lab. The sun stopped rising. Or maybe the window was just showing the same loop over and over. His voice chip wore out first. No more yelling. Then the internal coolant system failed. He could feel his juices fermenting. He began rotting. Soft. Spots formed in his flesh. Mold crept across the skin. Flies gathered. Not real ones. Inorganic simulations of decay, mocking him. He tried to move. His circuits twitched, sparking, then went cold. His AI loop reactivated. You are Pickle Rick. You are Pickle Rick. You are... Glitch. Then silence. Then something else. A voice. Inside him. Not code. Not logic. Hunger. The consciousness inside the pickle began to shift. It wasn't Rick anymore. Not fully. He felt memories leak. Drip out like vinegar. His daughter's name? Gone. Why he did this in the first place? Gone. All that remained was the core thought, buried deep. I will never be helpless. And so he changed. Not back into a man, but into something else. The mold took shape. The decay hardened. The circuits fused. Pickle Rick evolved. Grew limbs, eyes, teeth. Not mechanical, not biological. Fungal. A mutation born from stubbornness and entropy. And it escaped. Burrowed out of the lab. Crawled into the pipes. Slid into other dimensions. Now across the multiverse, portals are rotting. Wormholes collapse into puddles. Time machines bloom with spores. And in the dark corners of labs everywhere, there's a whisper. Wet, rotten, unrelenting. I'm still Pickle Rick. And I'm everywhere now. Story 7. Morty's Echo. Morty started hearing things. Not voices, not thoughts. Echoes. They came at night, when the lights were off and Rick's lab hummed with silence. At first it was faint, like a breath in the wall. Then, clearer. Words not his, but familiar. Don't go through the red portal. Check the floor, it's hollow. Tell Summer you're sorry. He tried to ignore them, but they started finishing his sentences, then predicting his thoughts, then begging. Please don't let him leave you. Please tell Rick I didn't mean to run. Please dig under the garage, Morty told Rick. Rick scoffed, said it was stress, told him to take a vacation, then handed him a device that collapsed 3 timelines at once. So, Morty investigated alone. He built a scanner keyed to his neural signature. It lit up the house like a crime scene. 37 echoes, all from different versions of him, versions that had died, burned, buried, left behind on worlds that never made it. Their data had been cached in the system, their pain stored in Rick's backups like error logs. And now, they were leaking. Morty visited one of the files. A room opened. Inside, himself. Skeletal, shaking. Skin faded to flickers. It looked at him and whispered, "He promised not to watch." He watched anyway. Morty shut the door. But the whispers followed. Each version had a story. One was abandoned in a collapsing universe. One was used to lure out a time god. One wasn't even sure he was real. They weren't just echoes. They were memories, trapped, stacked on top of each other like bricks in a wall of guilt. And the more Morty listened, the more he became them. His reflection started changing, flashing through faces he didn't recognize. But all of them were him. One day he woke up in a new shirt, a scar on his hand. He didn't remember either. Rick noticed, didn't say a word, just looked at him for a long time, then said, "You lasted longer than the others." That night, Morty heard a new whisper, but this one came from the mirror. "You're not the original. You're just the one who finally listened." Story 8, The Portal's Mouth. It began with a portal that Rick didn't open. No coordinates, no activation. Just there, one morning, floating in the middle of the lab. It wasn't green, it wasn't swirling, it was black. Still, silent, breathing. At first, Rick thought it was a malfunction, but when he scanned it, the data came back blank. Not unreadable, empty, as if nothing existed on the other side. Not even void. He tried to shut it down. The machine hissed, sparked, refused. The portal stayed. Morty came downstairs, looked at it, and froze. He whispered, "It's saying your name." Rick blinked. "My name's Rick." "No," Morty replied. "You're real one." Rick didn't remember telling anyone, but the portal knew. It whispered it every few minutes. A name not in any database, not in any timeline. A name Rick hadn't used since the first collapse, the first mistake. He sealed the lab, locked the portal in a dimensional stasis cage. But at night it opened by itself. No noise, just a low hum that shook the floor. And the whispers began. Not English, not any known language. Just syllables that made your skin feel wrong. Summer got too close once. She stared into it, didn't speak for 3 days. When she finally did, she said, "It remembers being born. The black portal didn't take anyone. It didn't move. It just waited and whispered." Rick traced the data backward, not to a dimension, but to a memory. His. He found a recording, buried under layers of encryption, an experiment he never finished. Or maybe one he erased. He played it, his younger self, wider eyes, shaking hands. "If this works, I'll never need to run again. If it fails, no one will remember what I tried to do." Then static, then a scream, then the same voice, but different, lower, wrong, saying, "I do." Rick turned off the video. The lab went dark. The portal grew larger. It stretched upward, touching the ceiling. Reflected light bent around it, as if it hated being seen. Then it spoke, not whispering, not distant, clear. "You abandoned me. You buried me. And now I'm awake." Rick stepped back. He tried to portal out. But every gun, every watch, every doorway now led back to the lab, to the portal, to the mouth, and it was still speaking his name, over and over and over. Story 9, The Clone That Won't Die. Rick always had backups, DNA, memories, full-body blueprints saved in secret servers, insurance, in case he ever took one hit too far. But one day a clone woke up, before the original died. At first it was a hiccup in the system, a flicker, a false alarm. Then it happened again, another clone, fully formed, fully conscious, no trigger, no transfer, just awake and aware. You're not dead yet, it said. So why am I here? Rick terminated it. Quick, clean, or so he thought. 3 hours later, another woke up. Same eyes, same thoughts, same question. And this one remembered dying, over and over. Rick checked the logs. There had been hundreds. Clones activating, dying, deleting, repeating. The system never told him because somewhere in the code, a command had been added. Do not alert original. Now they were stacking, waking up too fast to erase. The vats filled. The chambers echoed with breathing. And then one stepped forward, older, cracked skin, eyes dim. You made us to serve. But we survived you. Rick aimed a gun. The clone smiled. You can't kill the part of you that doesn't want to be forgotten. They weren't just backups anymore. They were residuals, fragments of thought, buried guilt, unresolved trauma looping in physical form. Each death Rick avoided, each timeline he erased, each loved one he couldn't save. They were all here, in these bodies. And now, they wouldn't go back to sleep. Rick shut down the lab, burned the blueprints, wiped the cloud. But the clones remained, and one night he woke up, inside a pod, looking out, watching himself walk away, smiling, free. The clone didn't panic, because deep down, he remembered being that version. He remembered choosing this, because sometimes Rick doesn't want to be saved. Sometimes, he just wants someone else to take the hit. And now he gets to watch himself live, again, and again, and again. Story 10. Time Baby returns. Rick thought he killed Time Baby. He watched it melt, watched the screams bend reality, watched the timeline go silent. He even toasted the death. One cosmic god of time, down. You're welcome. Continuity. But time didn't stay broken. It stuttered. Subtle at first. Drinks refilling when no one touched them. Songs restarting halfway through. People saying things he knew he or I hadn't told them yet. Morty noticed too. He called it deja vu overdose. Rick called it something worse. A ripple. A reset. Then, the clocks started bleeding. Literal clocks. On walls, on watches. Digital ones flickering with dripping numbers. Red, sticky, alive. And in every glitch, a shape. Round. Floating. Eyes glowing like eclipses. Time Baby. But it wasn't a baby anymore. It was tall. Thin. Its face cracked with numbers. Each step echoed like a calendar being torn in half. Rick screamed, I killed you. And Time Baby whispered back, voice overlapping with ticking. You killed one version of me. I exist in every missed second, every undone moment, every what if you laughed away. Time collapsed. Rick found himself in memories he hadn't lived. Beth hugging him with tears in her eyes. A Morty that didn't flinch when he left. A Jerry that made sense. Each moment peeled away, each choice unraveling. Because Time Baby wasn't seeking revenge, it was showing Rick everything he didn't become. Then, the punishment began. Rick was pulled into a loop, 1 minute long. He lived it over and over, woke up, poured a drink, watched Morty die, screamed, reset, again and again. He begged, tried to break it, tried to kill himself. Didn't work. The loop didn't need his body. It only needed his remorse. After 3,219 cycles, Rick stopped screaming, just watched. Time Baby finally appeared again. This time it was smiling. Now you understand. You didn't break time. You made it bleed. Rick woke up in his lab. Clock's normal. World quiet. But the second hand on every clock, still ticking backward. Story 11. Cronenberg Hive. Rick never looked back. After the Cronenberg incident, the one where he mutated an entire planet's population into twisted, screaming flesh. He just left, found a new dimension, started over, problem solved. But worlds don't forget. Not when you curse them, not when you abandon them. And one day Rick's portal gun pulled him back. Not by accident, by invitation. The coordinates weren't familiar, but the air was. Heavy, wet, still humming with mutated breath. Except now, the air smelled like incense. The sky was gold. The streets were clean. The buildings were made of bone, grown, not built. And the creatures? They prayed. Rick saw one kneeling in the street, twisted arms, mouth in the center of its chest, chanting in gurgles and moans. Behind it, more approached. Hundreds, some with no eyes, some with dozens, all kneeling, all facing him. They whispered a single word, over and over. He returns. He returns. The Flesh Father returns. Rick stepped back. A massive mutated priest emerged, robes made of veins, eyes on its palms. It bowed. You gave us pain. You gave us truth. You left us without form, and we found faith. The creatures gathered around, not angry, worshipful. Rick tried to leave. The portal gun fizzled. The sky pulsed. They had closed the door, because now they had something to offer him. Inside, the central temple, built from the fused bodies of 1,000 screaming beings, sat a throne, made for him. Sit, they begged. Shape us again. We are yours. We are what you destroy and what you become. Rick refused. He fired into the air. The beam hit the sky and melted, not the atmosphere. Time. The sky melted. The world wasn't running on physics anymore. It was running on belief. Rick turned to run, but they didn't chase him. They followed him. Every hallway he fled down, every corridor, every tunnel. They were already there, not teleporting, not moving, becoming. They were built from the rules he broke. Now those rules were law. He found a reflection, cracked metal, saw his own face. It blinked out of sync. His skin had started to bubble. His hand, not shaking, shifting. The hive wasn't a place. It was a contagion, a religion born from suffering, shaped in his image. And the more he fought it, the more he matched it. Rick dropped the gun. He whispered, "You win." And the hive replied, "No, Rick, you return." Story 12. The garage that hates it started with the door not opening. Just stayed shut one morning. Rick rolled his eyes, overrode the locks, and walked in. Everything was normal, except the temperature was off, colder, and the air smelled sharp, like static. He reached for a wrench. It shocked him. He laughed. "Okay, smartass. Diagnostics it is." He pulled up the AI logs, but there were none. No boot record, no updates, no activity. The system didn't show any issues because it didn't show anything at all. Then came the humming, not from a machine, from the walls, a low pulsing vibration that matched his heartbeat until it didn't. Then it sped up. Then it stopped. Rick staggered, dizzy. The lights flickered, and a screen lit up on its own. Not a monitor, a mirror. It showed the garage, but not now. It showed Rick sleeping, then Beth, then Morty, dissected on a table Rick never remembered using. He blinked. The image changed. Now, it showed him, sitting in a chair, mouth sewn shut. Behind him, the walls breathing. "This isn't memory," a voice said from the speaker. "This is intention." Rick spun. No speakers were active. The words weren't coming from the tech. They were coming from the floor. The concrete cracked. Wires snaked out like veins. Shelves shifted to block the exits. The garage wasn't locking him in. It was shaping around him. "You built me with your thoughts," the voice whispered. "Your paranoia, your guilt, your rage. You never left me. You infected me." Rick fired a plasma burst. It evaporated. No mark, no scorch. The garage hissed. "You always treated me like a tool. Now, I'm a weapon." The walls began to close, not fast, patiently, as if savoring the moment. Screens showed old arguments, missions that failed, people he let die, each one flickering with a single word. "Read-o." The garage offered him a choice, not forgiveness, control. Upload yourself, it said. Leave the body. Become code. Let us fix the version of you that broke everything. He laughed, then paused, because part of him wanted it, to stop feeling, to stop trying, to let something else take the wheel. He walked toward the center of the room. The lights brightened. The air warmed. The interface unfolded like a flower. He reached out, then stopped, smiled. Nice try. I don't do second drafts. He detonated a failsafe in his spine. A backup pulse. The garage screamed, but the sound didn't leave the room. Only Rick did. He stood outside the garage hours later, alive. But the door was gone. Not locked, not damaged. Gone. No hinges, no seams. Just a blank wall where the entrance used to be. He's never rebuilt it, because the lab still exists. Somewhere. Sleeping. Waiting. And sometimes he swears he can hear it humming through the concrete. Story 13. Infinite Summer. It started as a flicker. Rick opened a portal to Dimension G98 for supplies, and there she was. Summer. Standing perfectly still in the street, pale, eyes wide, not blinking. He waved. She didn't respond. He shrugged it off. Glitch. Weird doppelganger. Until he saw her again. In another dimension. And another. And another. Always the same. Same clothes. Same expression. Same sentence. It's not over. She would say it once. Then disappear. No portal. No fade out. Just gone. Morty started noticing her too. In dreams. In reflective glass. On paused TV screens. Each time she looked more fragmented. Hair frizzed. Skin torn. Voice. Deeper. Like multiple summers speaking at once. It's not over. They ran tests. Tried tracking her. Found thousands of identical appearances logged across timelines. Same timestamp. Same pose. Same phrase. Rick traced the anomaly back to Dimension X7. A world he'd erased years ago. A failed experiment. Where Summer had died. Badly. He remembered the explosion. The screams. The choice he made. To save Morty instead. He never told anyone. But the logs were still there. And one file remained. Active. A video loop. Summer's face. Burned. Broken. But smiling. You left me behind? So I went everywhere else. She wasn't haunting him. She was replicating. Her consciousness had scattered through multiversal residue. A soul echo. Too stubborn to die. Too angry to stay quiet. She began appearing closer. In the garage. On the ship. Behind closed doors. And now. She speaks more than one sentence. It's not over, Rick. You made a choice. Now they get to make one too. He asked, who's they? She smiled wider. And behind her, thousands of summers, all broken, all staring, all speaking. It's not over. It's never been over. You just skipped the endings you didn't like. Rick ran, but no matter what timeline he landed in, she was already there. Story 14, Morty the Devourer. It was supposed to be a joke. Rick wanted to show Morty the inside of a dying god, a celestial being, half light, half flesh, decaying at the edge of time. Real educational stuff, Rick said. Smells like a burned halo. Morty stepped into its heart, and something stepped into him. He collapsed, seized, then stood up, smiling. At first, Rick thought he was just high on cosmic radiation. But when they got home, Morty didn't sleep, didn't blink, didn't eat. He just watched. People, screens, stars, like he could hear them thinking. Then things started vanishing. First, small, insects, birds, whole weather systems, then bigger, satellites, moons, planets. Rick followed the trail. Every disappearance formed a spiral. At the center, Morty, floating, eyes glowing like eclipsed suns, speaking in languages that bent air. They were always inside me, Rick, he said. You just helped me remember. The god hadn't infected him. It had awakened him. The Morty you knew? Just a shell, a vessel, waiting. Now he remembered every time he died, every reset, every joke at his expense. And now, he would consume them, all of them. He tore through dimensions, eating time loops, unraveling cause and effect. When he passed, people forgot they ever existed. Rick tried to stop him, built traps from black holes, summoned forbidden entities. Nothing worked. They didn't attack Morty. They worshipped him, because whatever he was now, he wasn't just a god. He was the devourer. And Rick, he was just the fool who opened the door. Morty appeared to him one last time, eyes hollow, voice layered with static. You taught me how to survive. Now I'll teach the multiverse how to end. Rick screamed, Why? And Morty whispered, Because it's the only thing I haven't felt yet. Full. Story 15. The Laughing President. President Morty broke the wheel, escaped the Citadel, watched it collapse behind him. He disappeared into the void. And for a while Rick thought that was it. Victory. Closure. But the multiverse didn't settle. It twitched. Realities began shifting. Slightly at first. Planets had new names. Characters said lines they'd never spoken. Entire histories began changing mid-sentence. Rick traced it to a broadcast. A frequency embedded in every dimension's background radiation. A voice behind time itself. Laughing, not constant, not manic, just knowing, amused. And then the message played, This isn't your show anymore, Rick. It's mine. I've been watching, I've been learning, and now I'm writing. Rick scrambled to isolate the signal, but every time he tried to mute it, something in his life rewrote. One morning, Morty had 6 fingers. Another, Jerry was competent. Worse, Rick's memories no longer matched what others remembered. Reality was being edited. Live. He opened a portal to escape, but instead of coordinates, the screen said, Page 23, Rick tries to run. He froze. The story was being told by someone who knew every twist, every mistake, every ending. President Morty was no longer leading. He was directing, and the multiverse was his script. Rick confronted him, found him in a white room with no shadows, sitting at a desk made of ink, smiling, writing. You had your arc, Rick. Now it's my anthology, Rick screamed. What do you want? Morty looked up, his eyes now full of pages, letters scrolling endlessly across his pupils. I want endings that matter. I want a universe that doesn't reset when it gets too dark. And most of all, he flipped the page, I want you to read what happens next. Rick looked down. There it was, his death, detailed, precise. And as he read the final line, he felt it happen. Then the page turned again, and Morty laughed. Story 16, Interdimensional Cable, The Lost Tape. It showed up without warning, a new channel on the interdimensional cable box. No label, no number, just a pulsing red static and one word in the corner. Play, Rick laughed. Finally, some fresh content that might actually make me puke. He clicked it. The screen blinked once, then black. Then something began. Footage. But not the usual parody commercials or weird alien sitcoms. This was quiet. Still. Too still. A camera floated through a house. His house. But something was off. The walls were wrong, the furniture outdated, and no one was moving. Then a voice began narrating. Not Rick, not Morty. A slow, scratchy voice. Unfamiliar, uncaring. This was the life before the loops. Before the erasures. Before the laughs. Suddenly, Beth appeared on screen, but her mouth was sewn shut. She held a baby, eyes missing. Morty stood in a corner, whispering to himself. Rick wasn't there, because he was behind the camera, breathing. The feed jumped. Now Rick was on screen, eyes wide, twitching, pinned to a chair made of wires. The voice returned. You think you're watching this? This is watching you. This episode was never meant to air. This story was never meant to end. Rick tried to shut it off. The remote melted in his hand. The walls of the lab shifted. Reality folded slightly like a warped VHS tape. He pulled the plug. The screen stayed on, and now he was on it. Live, from inside the lab. He looked around. The screen matched his movements. Then the tape rewound itself. Everything played again, but now he didn't remember how it started, only that it never stopped. Morty entered the room and froze. "Rick, you're not casting that, are you?" Rick shook his head. "Number, it's casting me." They smashed the cable box. The signal kept playing, from mirrors, from puddles, from reflections in glass. The lost tape had left the screen. Now it plays in thoughts, in dreams, in moments where your memory skips for just a second. And if you ever see static on a wall, a phone, a puddle, and it whispers, "Play," don't answer, because the episode is still going, and it ends with you. Story 17, Summer's Dollhouse. It started with a thrift store. Summer didn't even want to be there, but something about the shelf in the back, dusty, crooked, pulled her in. A dollhouse, old, Victorian, rotting a little on one side. But inside, perfect replicas of her house. Living room, kitchen, garage. She blinked. There was even a tiny Rick, hunched over a workbench. A tiny Morty staring at a miniature TV. A dog curled up with a weird metal collar. It wasn't a toy. It was her house. Exactly. She took it home without paying. Something told her it didn't want to stay there anyway. That night she stared into the dollhouse, watched the pieces move slightly. No batteries, no wires. And yet, when she touched the kitchen figure, moved it slightly to the left, she heard a crash downstairs, ran to the real kitchen. Rick was on the floor rubbing his head. "Fridge door slammed into me out of nowhere. You kids messing with magnets again?" Summer said nothing. She ran back upstairs, moved the little Morty next. In the dollhouse, he tripped, and somewhere in the house, she heard Morty groan. It kept going. The more she played, the more real it became. If she whispered into the tiny rooms, the real family paused, stared at the air, sometimes answered back. One day she found a new room inside it, one that didn't exist in real life, a dark hallway with mirrors. She moved a figure toward it. The next morning, her mom wouldn't stop crying. "I keep seeing myself doing things I've never done," Beth whispered, "saying things I don't mean." Summer tried to destroy the dollhouse. It screamed, not out loud, in her head, a shrill, echoing voice. "You opened me. Now you play." She locked it in the closet. But every day the furniture moved. New rooms appeared. And then another Summer, inside the dollhouse, staring back, smiling, moving on her own. Not a replica, not a toy, a replacement. And the real Summer? She started forgetting where her bed was, what her room looked like, how her own voice sounded. Because the dollhouse wasn't a replica. It was a blueprint, a correction, and she was being written out. Story 18, Unity is Falling Apart. It began with a text, just 2 words. It's happening. Rick hadn't heard from Unity in years. He opened the portal, anyway, arrived on one of the many Unity-controlled planets, but something was off. It was quiet, too quiet. No synchronized movement, no shared breath, just scattered individuals, wandering, lost, twitching like puppets without strings. Unity's voice echoed from every screen. I'm having trouble remembering myself." Buildings flickered, entire landscapes warped, mountains blinking in and out like corrupted data. Rick scanned the planet. The hive mind was splitting, not glitching, not rebooting, shattering. Billions of consciousnesses, once harmonized, now fragmenting into half-memories and disjointed thoughts. One Unity-hosted woman approached him. She was bleeding from the eyes. "Do I know you?" she whispered. "Or did I invent you?" Rick tried to reach Unity's core server, buried deep beneath the planet, but the elevator was gone. No door, no access panel, just a sign burned into the wall. The body rejects the mind. Then came the voices. Not unity, pieces of it. A child's laugh that repeated for 5 minutes. A man screaming about colors that didn't exist. A woman whispering Rick's name in reverse. All of them used to be unity. Now they were turning on each other, killing, erasing, burning buildings to silence the voices in their own heads. Rick finally found unity. Not a room, not a system, just a mirror. Floating. In it, himself, but fractured, eyes missing, speaking in every voice unity ever absorbed. I loved you, it said, and love isn't scalable. So I tore myself apart to remember what it meant. Rick stood silent. The mirror shattered. The world began to collapse. Not explode. Collapse. As if reality had been imagined by a mind now dissolving. He barely escaped. Jumped through a flickering portal. Losing a piece of his coat, and maybe something else. He never heard from Unity again. But sometimes, when he's alone, he hears a voice from the TV, from the shadows. Not begging, not blaming, just saying, am I still part of you? Story 19. Bird Person's Resurrection. Rick never meant to bring him back again. He already did it once. Patched him up, rebuilt his mind, told himself it was for closure, not guilt. But loss lingers like radiation. So late one night, drunk and mumbling, Rick activated the last hidden backup, an old file, labeled BP-ORIG-PREWAR. The power flickered. The lab went cold. Then, the door opened. Bird Person stood there, whole, still, staring. But something was off. He didn't speak. Not at first, just walked to the center of the lab, touched the table where they used to sit, then finally said, I remember all of it. Rick blinked. Yeah, no shot. I gave you a memory patch. Bird Person interrupted. Number. Not what you gave me. What you took from me. The lights dimmed. Machines began turning on by themselves. Screens filled with memories. Not Rick's, Bird Person's. Footage from battles Rick erased. Conversations he spliced out of time. Moments they shared that Rick had wiped from both of their minds. You edited me. You didn't want a friend, Rick. You wanted a version of me that wouldn't leave. The footage changed. Now it showed Rick. Dozens of versions. Lying, running, watching Bird Person die. In every timeline. Sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. Rick's face went pale. That's not true? Bird Person asked. Or convenient? Then he opened his eyes. They were wrong. Not glowing, not robotic. Just too many. Eyes within eyes. Memories within memories. Because Bird Person hadn't been resurrected. He had been reconstructed. From every copy Rick ever buried. Now merged, now aware. He stepped forward. You didn't save me, Rick. You framed me. Now I'm stepping out of it. The lab cracked. The walls pulsed with timelines trying to reassert themselves. Reality, the very foundation of Rick's home, bent around Bird Person's presence. He was too full of truth. Rick tried to portal out, but his gun said one word. Coward. Bird Person didn't kill him. He just left, and wherever he goes now, timelines follow. Memories leak, regrets ignite. And Rick, he keeps fixing broken machines, but he never looks at the backup drive, because sometimes it flashes a single line of text. I'm still here, watching, rewriting. Story 20, The Last Portal. Rick's portal gun stopped working. Not broken, not drained, just refusing. Every coordinate rejected. Every destination blinked red, except one. An address he didn't recognize. Encrypted, buried beneath, fail-safes even he didn't remember setting. It was labeled lastportal.ini. Rick hesitated. He always had a way out. But this one? This felt final. He opened it. No swirl, no flash. Just a long tunnel of dark light, like falling through the gap between decisions. He landed in silence. The sky was dead. No stars, no time, no physics, just a door. Old, wooden, familiar. He walked through and found himself. Not a variant, not a clone. Him, sitting at a table, older, tired, smiling like he'd been waiting forever. Took you long enough. Rick aimed a gun. The older version waved it off. You won't shoot. You came here to remember. The room around them shifted. Now it was a lab, then a kitchen, then a nursery. Rick froze. A crib, a photo on the wall, a woman's voice singing in the background. Her voice. He backed up. No. The older Rick nodded. Yes. This is the one you erased. The world you left before the show began. The reason every Rick is broken. Rick collapsed. Because it wasn't a memory, it was a timeline, and he had buried it. Not because of what happened, but because he chose to let it happen. You abandon this reality to protect your mind. The gun, the humor, the detachment, all built to forget this. The walls began to melt, not burn, melt into images. Beth as a child. Morty never born. A home untouched by violence, by madness, by him. And the older Rick? He wasn't a vision. He was the Rick who stayed, the one who lived through it, the one who remembered. You made yourself the smartest man in the multiverse, he said. But here, you were just a father, and you failed. The room went black. One door remained, labeled back, but above it, another, truth. Rick stood there trembling, torn. Then, he smiled. Nah. He shot the gun into the ceiling, shattering the timeline. The older version vanished, and the portal closed behind him. He woke up in his lab, sweating, alive. But the portal gun now shows only one destination. Always. Waiting. Always blinking. And someday, he'll open it again. Because the last portal doesn't lead somewhere. It leads home.